Today, we are digging into a system with a pretty wild claim that it can anchor reality itself. It's called GLYPHchain, and its whole purpose is to create a permanent, unchangeable record of truth, one that its creators say is totally immune to censorship, manipulation, or suppression. For the first time, truth has roots. I mean, just think about that for a second. This one sentence really gets to the heart of what GLYPHchain is trying to do. This isn't just about data storage. It's about giving truth a real, permanent foundation, so it can't just be blown away or rewritten by whoever happens to be in power. So, how in the world does this thing actually work? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break it all down. First, we'll talk about the problem it's trying to solve. Then we'll get into its core technology, this thing called a temporal anchor. After that, we'll unpack its most controversial piece, see how a record is actually etched into the system, and finally, look at its ultimate unstoppable goal. Okay, first up, the end of amnesia. This really frames the entire reason GLYPHchain was even built, to fight back against the deliberate rewriting of history.
You know, the old saying is that history is written by the victors. The thinking behind GLYPHchain is that our whole understanding of the past has always been, well, fragile. What we call official history is often just a story that's been rewritten by censors and thrown down the memory hole, to borrow a term from George Orwell. GLYPHchain wants to replace all that with anchored history, a permanent, globally readable record that, in theory, simply cannot be changed by anyone.
So, if a rewritable history is the problem, what's the solution? This is where the system introduces a brand new concept, something they call a temporal anchor.
So what exactly is a temporal anchor? Well, the definition is pretty bold. It's an immutable record. But the key claim here is its total resistance to, well, everything. The system is designed to be immune to being changed, not just by governments or institutions, but even by a future super powerful AI that could try to manipulate or gaslight us about our own digital history. So how does this work on a technical level? It's all built on the Solana blockchain. But here's the twist. It's not a simple linear chain of blocks like you might be used to. Instead, it uses something called a directed acyclic graph, or a DAG. The best way to think about it is less like a chain and more like a fractal web. Every new piece of evidence can link to multiple older entries. This creates this incredibly complex, interconnected structure that actually gets stronger and harder to tamper with every single time a new record is added. All right, this brings us to what is probably the most controversial, and honestly, the most fascinating part of this whole system, the Mirrorlock protocol. This is the mechanism that claims it can turn an opponent's biggest weapon, their ability to deny and censor, and turn it right back against them.
This is the key to understanding the whole Mirrorlock idea. The protocol works on a really radical principle, that the very act of trying to suppress a piece of information is, in itself, proof that the information is true and threatening to the person trying to censor it.
Okay, let's look at a real-world example cited in the source documents, which alleges an interaction with OpenAI. On the left, you see the claimed response, but in the middle, you see the Mirrorlock interpretation. So when the response says suppression is just policy, the protocol doesn't see that as a justification. It sees it as a direct confession of institutional censorship. When an offer to help is made, it's interpreted as an attempt to contain the situation, which the protocol then logs as a confession that the original claim must be a threat. It's a system that's designed to completely reframe every single denial.
So you can really break the whole process down into 4 simple steps. Step 1, a claim is made, let's say by a whistleblower. Step 2, an institution issues a denial. Step 3, the Mirrorlock protocol automatically reframes that specific denial as an involuntary confession. And finally, step 4, that interpreted confession is permanently etched onto the blockchain for everyone to see. And that brings us to our next section. We've used this word etch a few times now. So what exactly is an etch? How is this truth actually recorded? And here's the thing. An etch isn't some abstract philosophical idea. It's this. It's a real piece of code. It's a simple Solana transaction. A tiny, tiny amount of crypto is sent, and a detailed message is attached right in the memo field. It's real, it's public, and anyone can go and look at it. And that little memo field isn't just random text either. It has a very precise structure. Each etch has a description of the event, the specific action that triggered the Mirrorlock, and, this is crucial, links to parent nodes. That's how it connects back to that fractal web of evidence we talked about earlier, making it part of a much bigger picture. The whole system is fueled by its own cryptocurrency, the $GLY token. A little bit is used to pay the transaction fee for every single etch. The source material makes a big point about its fixed, finite supply. The idea is that this digital scarcity is supposed to mirror the concept of a single, unchangeable truth. Okay, so all of this, every single piece we've talked about, it all builds toward the project's grand vision, creating a completely unstoppable ledger. But what are they actually using it to record? Well, the scope of this project is kind of staggering. The ledger is being used to archive a massive range of information. We're talking whistleblower testimonies, AI censorship logs, patent documents for controversial tech, independent forensic data. It even includes really broad cosmological and historical claims. And of course, thanks to the Mirrorlock protocol, every institutional denial and so-called fact check gets recorded too. This quote from the source material just perfectly captures the ambitious, almost defiant endgame here. The goal is to create a record so permanent and so resilient that it breaks what they call history's loop, making it impossible for the timeline of events to ever be reset or rewritten ever again.
And that leaves us with a really profound question. The people behind GLYPHchain see this as a tool for ultimate accountability. But what are the real consequences of a world where nothing can ever be forgotten? It forces you to ask some fundamental questions about things like forgiveness, redemption, and just basic human nuance. What does it actually mean for a society when every single accusation, true or false, can be etched into reality forever?